Well, that one's looking a little bit crispy. Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the second episode on our Outdoor 64. So what we need to do here is take a closer look at the board. I'll show you why I am going to be replacing the printed circuit board. And then we're going to be documenting what IC sockets we need and capacitor values. Since I'm going to be removing everything from this board and transplanting to a new board, I might as well go ahead and replace the electrolytics at the same time. I know that a lot of people are not fans of just shotgun replacing them all, but if I'm going to be having to basically move everything over anyway, I might as well do it while I'm in the process. So here we go. All right, so this is a Commodore 250407 longboard out of a bread bin 64. It's the kind of standard Commodore 64 that everybody's used to, not the C model, the earlier one. And this Commodore 64 sat outside for a very, very long time. I'll go ahead and tell you the story. Back in 2007 or so, we moved from a rental home into basically our starter home. And a lot of stuff got set out behind a shed, and I did not realize that this Commodore 64 was out there. So this Commodore 64 sat behind a shed, kind of under an overhang, but still exposed to the elements from 2007 until 2012. In 2012, it got moved, but it got placed into basically an open shed, almost a carport, and it sat there up until maybe last year, and I finally put it into basically secured storage, and I decided to get it out and take a look at it. So of course it's very dirty, as you can see here. It's been exposed to the elements, like I said, and I went ahead and pulled the screws out so that I can get it out of the case. And as you can see, there's some evidence of rusty water there in the case. So, like I said, this is considered a longboard model. It has basically more ICs, and it's a full-length board. So, if you were going to do a transplant, this would technically be the most complicated one. So, what I ran into is I can hook this up, and it sort of works. It displays the normal display, but the text is a little bit garbled. You could type on the keyboard. Of course, the keyboard has its own set of issues, but you can see that you're entering text. You can hit enter. You can see that it's executing commands. It's not very clear because, like I said, the text is garbled. So when I was looking at it, and I'll have to see if I can dig up some photos to stick in here, but a lot of the IC legs were not soldered correctly. Like they just barely had any solder on them. There were a few that had no solder at all. So not only had this machine set outside for a very long time, but I don't think it had ever really been correct from the factory. So I decided to do some resoldering. And while I was doing that, I found some evidence of blown traces in the past. And then even with kind of my normal heat setting, pads were just lifting right off. Traces were falling apart. So this board has a little bit of, well, it's two things. One is it has trace rot from being exposed to the elements for too long. But then also, during the period of time where this board was manufactured, the techniques were just not there to make a reliable circuit board with plated through holes. And so they just don't hold up very well. And that's part of the reason why I went ahead and I didn't order it. My wife ordered it, but I had been talking to her about it. So she just kind of picked up on what I wanted and got it ordered for me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. We'll pick up on my laptop when I start ordering parts. I'm going to go ahead and take some photos, document all of these various electrolytic capacitor values, and I think what we can do for the IC sockets is we could take a look at some high-resolution photos that I took of the replacement longboard when it came in, and we can figure out what the correct ICs are for this unit, or the correct sockets are. So what I have on my screen here is a picture of the replacement longboard that I took, the Commodore assembly number 250407. So as you can see here, it shows us our IC footprints. Now what I recommend doing is going through and writing down the IC number, so U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, so on and so forth, like this, and write down what every one is. And of course, you can do that simply just by counting the pins along one side, multiplying by 2. That'll give you your pin count. Once you've got that done, if you're doing it in Notepad++, you can double click on your description and it'll highlight all of the items. Then you can go down here and below and write it with quantity times pin number and then what IC numbers you have. That way you can build your entire list. Now, after you have that done, you can go to an electronics dealer, like say for instance Mouser, and you can do some searches to see if you can find the components that you need. Now, of course, an option that you do have available is to buy a socket kit from somebody, but I've been looking around and for some reason everybody is out of stock. So I'll just build my own kit. Now, the other thing that you can do is search around on the internet and see if somebody else has already done this work before. I did find a post here from Sausage Toes from back in 2015 where they were looking for some sockets, and they have a list here that is partially complete, and they have Mouser part numbers. They also have a link to Mouser here, but what you'll run into is if you click this link, you'll get an access denied message, and that's because of the anti-DDoS protection that Mouser has built in. So what you will have to do instead, and I just closed the window. Okay, so we're back. I found it. So since you can't pull it up via the link, you'll just have to use the Mouser part number. So we'll go ahead and copy that. And I think I already have Mouser open here in the tab. I do. So you can paste that in here. And then that will tell you, if you scroll down, that this is a 40-pin socket, 2.54 millimeter pitch, which is the distance between pins, and a 15.24 millimeter row spacing. That's the distance between each side or rail of the IC socket. So with that information, we can start building out our list. Now, if we look here, for 40-pin ICs, we have U1, U2, U19, and U7. So that's all 4 of those. We have 3 of these sockets, which are going to be 24-pin. And then we have 2 that are 28-pin. And I've managed to find all of those on the Mouser site. They're also listed here. And so what we need is 14-pin sockets, 16-pin sockets, and I believe, yeah, so 14s, 16s, 18s, and 20s. So one trick that I have found based on this list, if you look at these Mouser part numbers, for like the 16-pin Dell socket, 517-4816-3000-CP. So that is going to be our part number. Let's grab that and we will paste it here. And then we will change the 16 to a 14. And when we do that, we found our 14-pin sockets. We can also do the exact same thing to get 18-pin sockets. And 20-pin sockets. So their part numbers are pretty consistent, at least on the 3M ones, and that will let you find it. Now, you do need to also verify, of course, that it's still the 2.54 millimeter pitch, which you could tell from the photo that those are all a consistent pitch. And then, of course, the spacing is consistent when you get to those smaller sizes. You can also see that from the photos. You will need to make sure that you've counted everything here and even the ones under the shield. Now, as for capacitor values, I took a bunch of photos. I'll put a few of those here. You just need to make sure that you're getting the same capacitance with at least the same voltage. I'd probably try to stay as close as possible. Now, what you will run into when you go to replace these capacitors is modern capacitors are probably going to be smaller in size than the original capacitors because capacitor construction techniques have improved over time. And of course, these days, we've worked through most of the capacitor plague problems that we had, but it's good to have newer capacitors because older capacitors do tend to dry out. Now, in small capacitors, it's not as prevalent as in large capacitors, but it still happens. And like I said earlier, we're going to have everything out of the board. We might as well go ahead and do this now. And then as far as the socketing goes, I want to be able to take each one of these chips out if we start having issues, or if reboarding this computer doesn't fix the issue. At least we'll be able to take chips out and test them without having to do a bunch of desoldering. And I know that installing sockets does create some issues where you can have IC creep in the sockets, but that's just something we'll deal with. I'd rather have it where it's serviceable, and I might have to reseat the chips every once in a while instead of having to go to a bunch of trouble to pull ICs out of position once they're soldered in place. Now, another thing we can look at doing is replacing DIN sockets. And another thing I see commonly listed is resistor packs. So there are a few resistor packs, like for instance, BP1 here. And there's another one here. Or sorry, RP1 and RP2. One other thing I was concerned about is transistors. Like for instance, we have Q8 here, and we have Q1 and Q2. I'm going to go ahead and try my best to harvest those. I'm also going to try to pull all my resistors and diodes. And of course, my bypassing caps, those shouldn't be a problem to pull and reuse. The solid state caps should be fine. It's mainly the electrolytics that I'm worried about. So that is going to be the direction we're going in. So let me do a quick run through here of the parts that we have ordered, and I'll talk about that just a little bit. I'm also going to include this list in the description of the video. So we have our 40-pin IC socket, our 28-pin, 24-pin, 16-pin, 14-pin, 18-pin, 20-pin. Now, what I have done here is, if you look at the values that I have listed, my quantities, I've gone ahead and increased each one of those by at least one. And what that's going to do is, if I damage a socket or break a socket or it shows up damaged, then I already have a spare. I don't have to wait for more parts to show up from Mauser. And whatever I have left, I'll just add into my stock here so that they'll be available for future use. On the capacitors, I've selected Panasonic capacitors. I also like Nichikon's. There are several brands out there that are decent. Just make sure you get a good quality capacitor. And I'll have these values listed as well. Now, a lot of people like to buy from DigiKey or another vendor. I happen to prefer Mauser. Mauser's warehouse is located in Central Texas. I'm also in Central Texas, and so I can pay for UPS ground shipping, and it actually shows up usually in about 2 business days. So that works pretty well for me, and that's why I like to use them. Now, as far as everything else goes here, there are a few other things that we could do, and I might consider doing some of those. For instance, replacing the DIN sockets, replacing the joystick port sockets, getting new headers. I'm probably going to end up getting new headers. There are also upgrades like replacing the RF modulator with like an RGB to HDMI or an HD64. Probably not going to mess with that at this point, but it's something I might do in the future. And then let's see here. When I took the cover off of this section under the shield, I noticed that there was a copper strap and some heatsink compound. I have some heatsink compound, so I will replace the heatsink compound on that chip to keep it cool. And I think that that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about here as far as this goes. Now, I'm sure we'll run into other things that we'll need to deal with as we go, and that's fine as well. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So, the other thing I wanted to mention before we leave the video is I've got at least 2 other videos on the AT&T 3B2 where I've run into technical issues or quality issues on both of them. And so we're at the point where we're going to move back into the rotation so that I can have some more time to finish these videos up. That's why I'm going to go ahead and get started on the Outdoor 64 project. And then I've got a few other projects here and there that we'll be able to get into. But we're not going to forget about the 3B2. We're going to keep doing coverage on it. Oh, my dogs are getting rowdy this morning. It's actually very, very early. I woke up at about 1:30 this morning, and it's currently almost 4. And the dogs aren't used to me being up at this time of the day, so I've got to give them a little bit of attention. And in fact, this is our new pup. This is Coco. She's, I'd say she's a good dog, but she's a pup, so she's got her issues. All right, Coco, go on. So I want to thank you for watching, for hanging out through the whole video, and I hope you've learned something today. I know I've learned something today. Hope you see again. I hope to see you again soon, and have a good day.